I just woke up. It's like the first day of daylight savings. I guess it's an hour ahead. It's like 7:30, but it would be 6:30. My port is de-accessed. I just de-accessed it at maybe an hour ago, and my hair looks like a troll. Like it's just sticking straight up because of how I slept. It's all going like that. But I thought I was going to make a hospital series, so a collection of videos, but the week was so tough that I don't know if I can like go through the whole thing in 5 different videos. So I'm just gonna start with one video, and then maybe I'll make a separate one that's more detailed about one specific part or something else about how I'm feeling. But the last video I put up did say that I was in the hospital, but I didn't get into it at all, and I know that leaves a lot of questions for people. And it was really very, very stressful because this was not my usual typical hospital experience. I'm used to going into the hospital for skin infections. They suck, they're not fun, they're really bad, they can be hard to treat, but I know what that's like. And this time it was not. So on Sunday, today is Sunday. Oh my gosh. So a week ago, I had IVIG, and my nurse came over and everything was great. She monitors my heart rate, my blood pressure, the speed of the IVIG, everything like that, gives me pain medication, and then leaves. That was fine. And that was like in the afternoon on Sunday a week ago. And then Monday, the next day, I was fine. Like I felt fine, but I woke up and I had to go, and I was supposed to get my eyes checked for new glasses, which we had to reschedule again, the 4th time, because things like this keep happening. I woke up and I just started walking around, and I was walking like I had ataxia. My gait was really unsteady, and I was like, wow, this is kind of weird. So I walked towards my mom's room, which is on the other side of the house, which maybe I should have stayed over here where it's safer, but that's what I did. And when you get to her room, there's like a narrow hallway, so I had like my hand on this side. It's not like that narrow, but you can touch both sides. So I had my hand on each side of the hallway, like aiding me to walk down. And then my mom was seeing how I was walking, and she's like, Cass, I think you're gonna have a seizure. So she held on to me and walked me back into my room, and I laid in my bed, and that could have been the onset of a seizure, like those kind of symptoms, but that's not what happened. I laid down just to like relax, and Noah was with me, and I closed my eyes, and I basically didn't open them for many, many hours, and I was not sleeping. That morning, I felt really, really cold, like really early. My mom had to come in and give me medication, and we didn't notice this as anything. Like, sometimes you wake up and you're freezing, and I go and I put on my robe, or I'm hot and I take off my robe. But that was a morning that I woke up extremely freezing. Before I got up and was walking unsteady. So those were two things that were off. And then it's just really hard to explain. My head really hurt, my neck really hurt, my eyes really hurt, and I was extremely weak that I couldn't move off of the bed, and my mom was like trying to talk to me and stuff, but I was so weak I couldn't respond to her back, and I couldn't open my eyes, and I couldn't like give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, like any form of communication. All I could do was that I was hearing everything she was saying, but I couldn't respond. It was not a seizure. There was no seizure-like activity at all. I was just laying in my bed lifeless, and my mom ended up having to call 911, and I'm going to put the pictures in from Monday on here. And it was really crazy. My heart rate was up at 120. I had a fever of 102. I never get fevers. And we went to the hospital because we were worried what the heck this is. First, my mom thought I had the flu. That was her first thought. And then she was wondering if my port was infected and I had sepsis. And after a while, well, I'll get there when I get there. I went to the hospital and I completely couldn't respond to anything. People thought that people meaning the staff there, thought that I was, what's the word when you don't talk? Like I was mute, and I didn't speak at all, and that was just during this time. This obviously I speak completely fine and am coherent, and I was like a complete vegetable. And they ran a bunch of tests in the ER, the flu test, blood work, drawings. They did blood cultures for a port infection. They did a chest x-ray. My oxygen was also in the 80s, which is really bad. And eventually I woke up. I was never asleep, but I had the strength to open my eyes. Not really move, but then it slowly got a little better. And they eventually discharged me Monday night-ish, and I went home. I woke up Tuesday feeling fine, except for just a bad headache in the back of my head, which I figured was just from everything that happened yesterday. At this point, I thought it was just kind of a fluke thing, but wasn't sure. I knew it wasn't the flu. I knew it wasn't strep throat. All those basics have been covered. So I was starting to get freezing again, and I didn't even like voice this because I thought, hey, it's winter, it's gonna like snow in 2 days, because this is before we got the snow. I was wearing a t-shirt, and I put on my robe, and I put on some fuzzy socks, and I went downstairs and I played with Sonoma in the basement, as I often do. And I was freezing down there. I couldn't feel my feet, I couldn't feel my hands, and I thought it was just because I was sitting down and throwing the ball, and I wasn't standing up and kicking it because my head hurt and I was tired and not feeling too great. And then I came upstairs and sat in the family room on the couch, and I got extremely cold, the most cold I've ever felt in my life, and I was shivering and shaking, and my teeth were nonstop chattering, and I was like trying to hide like underneath blankets and like keep the heat inside. I didn't know this, but my mom told me that my fingertips were blue, and I started feeling just shortness of breath again. So my mom came in and she was like, oh my gosh, we're having like a relapse of whatever the heck happened yesterday. And that's really exactly what happened, but it ended up being a lot worse than the first time. My heart rate resting, just laying completely horizontal, was 160. So my pulse was 160, and that's really high. My oxygen was up and down. What was the other thing? My temperature was crazy. Like, I was freezing, and then I went to being really hot, freezing, and I again got so weak that I couldn't open my eyes, and I just collapsed like on the mattress on the couch, and that was the last time I closed my eyes closed my eyes for a long time, because they stayed closed. And I had a lot of trouble breathing. I had tachycardia, and I had to go to the ER again. So this is the second day in a row that I had to be transported by ambulance to the ER around the same exact time of day, which was very strange. And when I got to the ER, again, I could hear everything that people were saying, but I was too weak to respond, and I felt so hot. And then I felt so cold and so hot. I was sweating through all of the clothes I had on, t-shirts, the sheets they had wrapped around me, and it was really bad. They had to stop before I got to the hospital and get a medic on the side of the road because my heart rate was so high. They were worried about my heart rate, and I had no idea what was wrong with me at that point. I got in really fast because once I got into the emergency room via ambulance, they checked my vitals, as they always do, and I had a temperature of 105.5, a heart rate of 160, and I think my blood pressure was in the like 80/50 or something. So 105.5 fever is like really high. So they were super concerned for me, and I got in right away, and they started testing me, and they did another chest x-ray, and they were trying to talk to me, and I was like, people, I can hear you, but I'm too weak, and I can't breathe enough, and I can't answer. I'm too weak to open my eyes to show you that I can hear you. it was really, really difficult. I spent a lot of time in the ER with my eyes completely closed and just laying there, and hooked up to a ton of heart rate monitors and oxygen and a pulse ox, and my heart was just racing, and they were like, this is not normal, there's something going on with her, which led into a hospital admittance. I went in on Monday, but then I came home in the night, and then I came back Tuesday, not even 24 hours later. So I was back in the hospital Tuesday, and then I was there until Thursday. It was really, really difficult. I couldn't sit up by myself. I couldn't move my arms by myself or my legs. I could barely open my eyes. I was like this, and this was my eyes open. I was sleeping the whole time. I had really bad pain, and they thought that I had possibly viral meningitis, aseptic meningitis, which just means it's not from a virus or bacteria, it's inflammation in your brain, but there's no specific thing. And that's when it hit me that I just had IVIG on that Sunday, and one of the rare and severe side effects are all the things that I've been having, which is usually aseptic meningitis. But they wanted to give me a spinal tap to see if I had meningitis, but you can't touch my back without giving me a seizure. So we were explaining that all to them while I was up in my room or in the ER both times, because they mentioned it a couple times. And the only way I'd be able to do that was to get general anesthesia and get intubated and do it, so I wouldn't be able to move at all. But then insurance and the people there would not understand why that was needed, because usually it's always just a localized procedure, but not when I'm a seizure patient. So I had to go down for a brain MRI, which did not last long. I had a seizure during it. There was a neurologist that came in who was really, really rude to me, but there was an infectious disease doctor that came in that was actually really nice. And I talk a lot of negativity really about infectious disease doctors because of my experiences with them and their views on chronic Lyme, but my mom and I knew that we were not going to say much or anything about chronic Lyme because this didn't have to do with that, and that's not why I'm here. We're focusing on the symptoms of why I'm here. So I stayed in the hospital and I slept with oxygen. I had a roommate who was an older woman who had some asthma problems and I'm not sure what else. Sonoma had to stay home because the hospital was so small and there was barely any room for just the nurses to walk in, and I was sharing a room. I was on pain meds around the clock, and they just kept trying to test me for things. They tested my thyroid. They thought again maybe it was the flu. They did another flu test with more respiratory things that came back negative, and thought I had a virus. And then they don't know about IVIG, so when I mentioned IVIG, they said, well, you've been doing that for a long time, so why would you react now to it? And I just kind of bit my tongue and said nothing, because it was obvious they didn't know about IVIG. It's different blood donors every time, so even though you're getting IVIG every week, you can react to it at any time. It could be your first time, it could be your 30th time, and then you never react again. And my mom was just really concerned for me because of my vitals being this unstable and being hooked to all the monitors, and I was just feeling so sick and so nauseous and dizzy and weak, and my fever was really scary, being 105.5. I had just a little bit, like 2 doses of some IV antibiotics for meningitis, and then they kept discontinuing things, which got really confusing. My back is really hurting me right now. Ow. My head still hurts a lot, but not as bad as it was in my neck. So I'm still relaxing, but since all my tests came back negative, there was nothing else they could do for me. If it were viral meningitis, they couldn't really treat a virus. They could just treat like symptoms, and that's what we're doing at home really, and resting. I didn't want to do more tests. I didn't want to get involved with more things that didn't make sense. It was a really hard week, and it was just a really complicated week, but my thoughts are that it is a side effect to the IVIG. My neurologist told me to hold off on IVIG for this week, so today I'm not having IVIG. I have the week off. I don't know if I'm gonna have it next week or when it's gonna be continued. I'm not sure how long I'm going to feel like this. Yesterday I slept all day. It's been difficult, and it was just crazy going into the hospital with such frightening symptoms. And it didn't help that I couldn't have Sonoma with me. By law, I could have Sonoma with me, but honestly, there was no space. There was no place to take him out to the bathroom. It was just way better for him to be at home. And then when it snowed, we were there during the snowstorm, so he played in the snow with my dad because he was out of work for the snow. So it was much better for him and for me and for my mom to not have to take care of me and Sonoma. And the fact that he had no place to go, and it wasn't the ideal place for him at that moment. So if you want to learn a little bit more, you can look up side effects of IVIG, rare side effects. You can look up viral meningitis and aseptic meningitis. I am negative for sepsis, so I do not have a blood infection in my port, and I do not need my port removed, which is awesome. I did not think I had sepsis. I thought that it was an IVIG thing. And I'm gonna finish it here right now because my stomach is starting to really hurt and I need to go lay down. But that was my kind of week in the hospital and getting home, and how tricky things were, and I did have a good amount of seizures there. It was really unexpected, but I just hope it doesn't happen again, and that I'm just gonna keep getting a little bit better every day from now on.